Here we go. Welcome everybody to the regular Thursday night Refuge Recovery World Services. I don't even know if we actually gave this a name, kind of whatever Thursday night with Noah book study and where we've been going through the text, the Refuge Recovery book, and we already went through all of the teaching and philosophy of refuge, and now we're in the back of the book where we're going week by week through the guided meditations. So if you've missed any of that, and it's all recorded on the YouTube channel, the Refuge Recovery World Services YouTube channel. From day one, all of the recordings are there. So if you want to go back and catch up on where we're at, we're several months into this Thursday night class. So again, welcome everybody, whether you're brand new or you're coming back, and some of you've been with us this whole time that we've been doing this 5 p.m. Pacific Refuge class group. This is not a Refuge Recovery meeting. Refuge Recovery meetings are peer-led. This is a World Services offering where I am doing some teaching and answering some questions as the founder of Refuge Recovery. And this is different than a normal Refuge Recovery meeting where there shouldn't be any sort of Q&As or people giving advice the way that I do. And it should really be peer-led and people just speaking from their own direct experience. So this is a bit different than normal refuge meetings. Again, welcome, and we'll begin with a guided meditation. We've completed the mindfulness instructions last week, and this week we move into the heart practices. Now in the book, in between the mindfulness meditation instructions and the heart practices, where we go into compassion and forgiveness and loving kindness and appreciation and equanimity, there's a short meditation on eating, on mindfulness of eating meditation. And we're going to skip it for now. As I said last week, I felt like it's very important. If you haven't looked at it, look at it, practice that, get something, get a snack, sit down, read those instructions, and bring that kind of mindfulness to your relationship to the food, your experience of the food, consuming, tasting, mindfulness of chewing, smelling, swallowing. I deeply encourage you to do that. It's a core practice. It's an opportunity that we have every day to bring our present time investigative awareness to an ordinary activity like eating. And there are many people in our program whose primary addiction or secondary addiction is food. And this becomes, it's important for all of us, but becomes perhaps even more necessary to really bring mindfulness to food if food has become a part of your process addiction or something that you are addicted to or struggle with certain types of food. That having been said, tonight we're going into the compassion practice. So I invite you to find a meditative posture. And I don't have a copy of the book with me tonight, so I'm going to read the instructions off of my phone. I'm not watching a video or texting somebody. I'm actually reading the instructions to you as they are written in the book. Compassion meditation. After establishing a comfortable sitting posture, allow your eyes to close and your attention to settle into the present time experience of the body. Relax any physical tension that is being held in the body by softening the belly. Relax the eyes and jaw and allow your shoulders to naturally fall away from the head. After a short period of settling into present time awareness, begin to reflect on your deepest desire for happiness and freedom from suffering. Allow your heart's truest longing for truth and well-being to come into consciousness. With each breath, breathe into the heart center the acknowledgement of your wish to be free from harm, to be safe and protected, and to experience compassion for all beings. Slowly begin to silently offer yourself compassionate phrases with the intention to uncover the heart's sometimes hidden, caring, and friendly response. Your phrases can be as simple as the following. May I learn to care about suffering and confusion. May I respond with mercy and empathy to pain. May I be filled with compassion. If those phrases do not mean anything to you, create your own words to meditate on. Find a few simple phrases that have a compassionate and merciful intention, and slowly begin to offer these well wishes to yourself. As you repeat these phrases in your mind, the attention will be drawn back into thinking about other things, or resisting and judging the practice or your capacity for compassion. It takes a gentle and persistent effort to return to the next phrase each time the attention wanders. May I learn to care about suffering and confusion. Feel the breath and the body's response to each phrase. May I respond with mercy and empathy to pain. Notice where the mind goes with each phrase. May I be filled with compassion. Allow the mind and body to relax into the reverberations of each phrase. Simply repeat these phrases over and over to yourself like a kind of mantra or statement of positive intention. But don't expect to instantly feel compassionate through this practice. Sometimes all we see is our lack of compassion and the judging mind's resistance. Simply acknowledge what is happening and continue to repeat the phrases, being as friendly and as merciful with yourself as possible in the process. Let go of sending compassion to yourself and bring attention back to your breath and body. Again, relaxing into the posture. Then bring someone to mind who has been beneficial for you to know, or someone you know of, someone who has inspired you or shown you great compassion. Recognizing that just as you wish to be cared for and understood, that benefactor too shares the universal desire to be met with compassion. Begin offering him or her the caring phrases. Slowly repeat each phrase with that person in mind as the object of your well-wishing. Just as I wish to learn to care about suffering and confusion, to respond with mercy and empathy to pain, and to be filled with compassion, may you also learn to care about suffering and confusion. May you respond with mercy and empathy to pain. May you be filled with compassion. Continue offering these phrases from your heart to your benefactors, developing the feeling of compassion in relationship to the pain of others. When the mind gets lost in a story, memory, or fantasy, simply return to the practice. Begin again, offering mercy and care to the benefactor. Now expand the practice to include family and friends towards whom your feelings may be mixed, both loving and judgmental. May you all learn to care about suffering and confusion. May you all respond with mercy and empathy to pain. May you all be filled with compassion. Now expand the practice to include the difficult people in your life and in the world. By difficult, we mean those whom you have put out of your heart, those towards whom you hold resentment. With even the most basic understanding of human nature, it'll become clear that all beings wish to be met with compassion. All beings, even the annoying, unskillful, violent, confused, and unkind, wish to be free from suffering. With this in mind, and with the intention to free yourself from hatred, fear, and ill will, allow someone who is a source of difficulty in your mind or your heart to be the object of your compassion meditation. Meeting that person with the same phrases and paying close attention to your heart-mind's response. May you learn to care about your suffering and confusion. May you respond with mercy and empathy to pain. May you be filled with compassion. Now begin to expand the field of compassion to all those who are in your immediate vicinity. Start by sending compassionate phrases to everyone in the meeting. Then gradually expand to those in your city or town, allowing your positive intention for meeting everyone with compassion to spread out in all directions. Imagine covering the whole world with these positive thoughts. Send compassion to the north and south, east and west, Radiate an open heart and fearless mind to all beings in existence, those above and below, the seen and the unseen, those being born and those who are dying. With a boundless and friendly intention, begin to repeat the phrases. May all beings learn to care about suffering and confusion. May all beings respond with mercy and empathy to pain. May all beings be filled with compassion. After a few minutes of sending compassion to all beings everywhere, simply let go of the phrases and bring attention back to your breath and body, investigating the sensations and emotions that are present now. Whenever you are ready, allow your eyes to open and your attention to come back to your surroundings. compassion is a huge part of the equation of our recovery. It is such a massively important skill. Without compassion, I'm surprised that people can maintain abstinence at all. And I think that so much relapse, so many times when people find themselves returning to addictive substances or behaviors, processes, it's because they're trying to avoid some pain. And compassion is the only solution, is the only wise relationship to pain. And if we've actually done this practice and developed this meditation skill and uncovered this compassionate heart that resides in all of us, then when life gets painful, difficult, as it inevitably will and continue to, then we have the ability to respond wisely to the pain rather than running from it back into the bottle, the needle, the pipe, the refrigerator, the sex, money, whatever the addictive process has become, the people, places, things, whatever. And so compassion is not just a good idea. It's a necessity for us, and it's such a and in Refuge Recovery in Buddhism, it is a core necessity. If we want to end suffering, if we want to recover, if we want to end the suffering that addiction creates, and even long after we have established abstinence, abstinence doesn't end our hatred of pain. Obviously, it becomes a necessity. And compassion is not, it's a practice. There's two ways to look at it. I want to share two perspectives here, and it's in the Refuge book, and I talk about it in different ways. One is, let's look at like human beings as, let's get scientific, neurobiology and human evolution. Unfortunately, we human beings are not born with a neural pathway of self-compassion. You don't have it. You weren't born with it. You don't naturally care about your own pain and meet pain with mercy and with empathy. And the natural human default is, I fucking hate pain. And I want to get high. I want to check out. I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to be in pain. So then we see like, oh, well, running from my pain didn't work. It actually made everything worse in the long term. And we come to recovery, and we have to learn to be with our pain. And then often we do still, even though we're abstinent, we still want to avoid our pain. And some of the stuff that we do, and I certainly don't want to present Buddhism or Refuge as any level of like masochism of like, yeah, like let's be in pain. Like we're not trying to seek out pain. What we're acknowledging is it's unavoidable. Avoid the avoidable pain. Learn compassion for the unavoidable unpleasantness of this human experience, incarnation. So because our minds don't have natural neuropathways of self-compassion, the human mind does have some compassion for others. Also depending on our conditioning and, family of origin and all that. But there is something natural in us to care about each other, but nothing very natural in us to care about ourselves. Whatever that is, that compassionate response It's deeply buried. So from one perspective, we don't have to have it, and we have to create a neural pathway. When we do this meditation and we say the phrases, even though we don't fucking mean them very much in the beginning, and we say, may I be filled with compassion, or I have compassion for my enemy, all not, and your mind is going like, no, I would hope they get hit by a bus. But you're saying it anyways, and you're creating this neurons that fire together, wire together. So we're training our mind to create neural pathways of kindness and mercy and empathy and compassion, training the mind to be compassionate. Earlier on in mindfulness, we talked about how the Buddha referred to the mind, the untrained mind, as like a wild monkey, the monkey mind. So part of it in mindfulness, we train the mind to stay. And then in compassionate, we train the mind to care. Because just staying present isn't enough. Present with care, with mercy, with friendliness, with compassion. Does that make sense to you? You can nod or flip me off or whatever you think. But that's one perspective, is we're training the mind. Other perspective, your heart, your true heart, your human part of this human experience incarnation, what we might call Buddha nature, gets a little woo-woo, but that there's part of us that is naturally loving and compassionate and appreciative, and it's part of who when the greed, hatred, and delusion, that habitual reactive survival instinct, when we go beneath it, when we clear away some of the attachment and aversion and self-centeredness, what remains in us, what is uncovered, is a compassionate heart, is part of you that naturally loves yourself, naturally cares about your own pain. It's part of your nature to be merciful. Beneath the critical, judging, fear-based, conditioned mind, there's a loving mind, a loving heart. So in that way, from that perspective, every time we say the phrase, rather than neurons creating neural pathways, we're excavating, we are uncovering. And I like this perspective. We are recovering something that's always been here. But we didn't have access to it. It was lost. Like, what does it mean to recover? To get back something that you lost. I lost my wallet, but I recovered it. I lost my compassion, but I meditated my ass off for 20 years and I recovered it. And maybe I like even better to think of it as uncovering. We are uncovering. It's there, it's in us, it's in all of us. Everyone has a loving heart. How deeply buried is that loving heart? How did our wounds, our addictions, our traumas, our religious conditioning, our societal, the oppression we experience, the fear we experience, how did our life put layers and layers and layers over our hearts? And even if you had a pretty good life, you probably wouldn't be here, but if you had a pretty good life, but you still have a human mind, the mind by itself. How many times did your mind judge you today? How many times did you have, aversion to something, some sound? How many times did your mind say, like, it's not quite right? Did you watch the news today? The world's not quite right. This shit's wrong. And there's some discernment to some of those thoughts. I don't want to dismiss them. but also just the mind by itself constantly laying these cover, meeting aversion, meeting with craving rather than uncover. It's like one of my teachers said, imagine a thin layer of rice paper being laid over your heart every time you have craving, every time you have aversion, every time you have self-centered something, fear, self-centeredness. So how many times a day do you experience aversion, self-centeredness, clinging, craving? How many rice paper sheets an hour are being piled on, blocking our heart, blocking our compassion? The meditation techniques in Refuge Recovery, the meditation techniques that the Buddha teaches us, are excavations. Every time you say the phrase, and even though you don't mean it, it's melting one of those layers that's blocking. It's uncovering. It's excavating down to eventually. And this is what the Buddha said. He said, I woke up. He said, I lived a life and I suffered. And I met pain with aversion, and I met pleasure with clinging and craving, and I took it all real personal. And then I meditated my ass off. I woke up. And what remained in me was compassion for all living beings, loving kindness towards all living beings, appreciation, appreciative joy, empathetic happiness towards all living beings. When we are free from the self-centered, fear-based addiction to our own minds, there's goodness here that just cares and celebrates and loves. You may or may not believe that. I'll tell you that, my experience was that when I heard that, I was like, no fucking way. There's no way. I'm meditating and all I see is fear in my mind. I don't see love. I don't see compassion. But I kept going. And then after some months and years of meditating, I was like, oh, there is more friendliness is happening. Oh, I've been saying this compassion stuff and not meaning it. Now I'm starting to mean it. And somewhere in there, I hate to tell you, but for me, years into meditation, oh, I'm starting to feel it. Wow. And as I started to feel compassion for myself and others and even my enemies, it felt much more like a more familiar than I thought. It wasn't foreign. It wasn't like, it wasn't brand new. It felt like a deja vu of like, oh, this is what they're talking about. I kind of know this feeling. It's familiar. It's always here. It's always been here. Maybe I used to only glimpse it on acid, but now, now I'm actually feeling it in reality. So I hope that these perspectives make sense. So I see some questions. I'm open to share, anything you want to talk about. And I like this first question. What about those of us who avoid pleasure, not pain? Does compassion help us learn to care about experiencing our happiness too? And if so, how? And I love, thanks, Rebecca, for asking this question. Because compassion is very much, and I know I started talking about a kind of general, but compassion itself is very much only focused on one thing. Only pain. Only pain or something that we're suffering about, which is also, right? If you're suffering about it, like, so when we're attached to pleasure, it doesn't seem like, well, it's not pain, but the attachment, the clinging, the addiction is painful. But really, compassion only is appropriate, is only meets that which is pain and suffering. So this question about if we avoid pleasure, not pain, it might not be that compassion is the practice. Then it's more of a mindfulness of like second foundation of learning to tolerate pleasure. We have to learn to tolerate pain. And, I know where the question is coming from. People do get their wires crossed, where rather than constantly avoiding pain, they're actually trying to avoid pleasure and seek pain, right? And there's this sort of like drawn towards that same dysfunctional, painful relationship over and over. But it's not compassion for when we're trying to avoid pleasure. That's more turning towards pleasure with learning to appreciate it, learning to tolerate it. And maybe, I don't know, I mean, Rebecca, you'd have to tell me, but my sense is that if we try to avoid pleasure because pleasure in our own perception, is actually unpleasant. Why do we, why would anybody avoid pleasure or avoid success or avoid situations where you're being complimented or praised or, because in your perception, that pleasant, what others would consider pleasant, you actually perceive it as painful. If that's what you're talking about, if your perception of what's supposed to be pleasant is actually painful to you, then yes, compassion. But if it is actually pleasant and you just, it's more of a core issue around unworthiness or, kind of self-sabotage, then it's not so much about compassion. It's just about building your tolerance and your worthiness up to be like, yeah, pleasure's okay. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to enjoy appropriate sense pleasures that aren't causing harm to ourselves or others. It's more than okay. It's actually important. We live in this human body, mind, heart process, and pain is unavoidable, but also pleasure is unavoidable. So no matter how much renunciation you experience, I mean, this is like the Buddha when he was an ascetic and he was, fasting, and he's like, and it still feels good sometimes. No matter how hardcore I practice renunciation, it's still like the sun hits my skin and I enjoy it and I feel like so indulgent. It's okay. It's just like you have a nervous system with pleasure and pain. Our recovery, our Dharma practice is to have equanimity and acceptance and meet the pleasure with non-attached appreciation and meet the pain with compassion. Letting go and caring. All the skills we're building. Richard says, I feel sad when I consider that humans don't have a natural tendency to care for ourselves, self-compassion. Are you sure about this? Isn't aversion to pain a form of self-cherishing? How is self-compassion different than self-cherishing? How is self-compassion? Isn't, I mean, I don't know, Richard, you know this as well as I do. So a couple of things. This does make sense. This is the teaching of early Buddhism, that we're not born with compassion, but that there's the potential for everyone to become compassionate, to awaken compassion, but that it's not natural to us. It's why the Buddha said, this path goes against the stream. He says, compassion is so radical, asking people to care about their own pain and the pain of others in this world of greed and hatred and delusion. He's like, how many people are going to do this? He was finally convinced to teach because he saw like, oh, maybe there will be a handful of radical drug addicts in every generation who suffered enough to say, fuck it, I'll meditate and I'll do it. But he was skeptical because he said, this is so counter. People are not naturally compassionate. They're naturally hateful, self-centered, and attached. And this is what he said. He said, looking at his generation, and then we look at our generation and be like, fuck, yeah, he was right. People are still hateful and self-centered and attached and crazy human beings, animals. We are animals, all of us. And so we don't make a distinction between self-compassion and self-cherishing. I feel like, I know in the Tibetan tradition, they have some distinctions between the two. My father, one of my teachers, used to love to say, cherish yourself. And I know in Tibetan Buddhism, like self-cherishing is a bad thing, but he was coming from this place of like, love yourself. It's okay to cherish yourself. You're worthy of your own love. You're worthy of your own compassion. You're worthy of treasuring yourself, cherishing. You know, there's that place in the Metta Sutta where the Buddha says, it's not the word cherish. What word does he use? I want to say, he says, cherish all living beings the way that a mother would cherish her child, her only child. A good mother. Not your mom, but a good mom. Would cherish a child with that sort of. So in the in the early Buddhist teachings, cherishing yourself and cherishing others and cherishing all living beings is a positive thing, and it's a radical thing. Okay, let's Jason, question, go for it.
Yeah, hey Noah, thanks, man. So this is funny that this was our meditation. I have the book here in front of me. I've never read through the back of all the meditations. I've been to only a couple meetings in person so far, and we haven't done the compassion meditation. But I had a therapy session today, and my therapist said to me something like, "Compassion is the antidote to shame," because my shame, I think, was a lot of source of my suffering and through my addiction, and it was the key driver of the whole thing. It was the fuel to the fire per se. But now I'm wondering, like, through this meditation, like, is it compassion that's the antidote to shame, or is it more or less like being compassionate to the shame is the antidote to the, because when I read that and it says, may I learn to meet my, I forget where it was, but you know what I'm saying? Like, is it being compassionate? Is compassion just in a general sense an antidote to shame, or is it more or less wanting to be compassionate to the shame? Because shame, I guess, has a role, doesn't it?
Shame is painful. So in that way, when shame has arisen in our mind, absolutely compassion for how painful it is to feel that shame is appropriate. So in that way, I would say that, as your therapist was saying, meeting the pain that we experience when we're stuck in shame will help as an antidote to some of the suffering that shame is creating. Now, I want to go to a whole nother level, which is that compassion isn't the full solution or antidote to shame, because shame is delusion, is confusion. Now, if you're meaning shame the way I mean shame, now we have to separate guilt and shame. Now, guilt is,
yeah.
So if it's really that shame, which is the lie that our mind tells us that we are bad, that we are unworthy, that we are, whatever, that kind of shame is delusion, right? That is your mind lying to you. There's no truth to that shame. It is ignorance. Now, I'm not saying this in a judgmental way at all, just to point out that we don't want to say, like, I'm going to just kind of live with this, but we're going to train our minds so thoroughly that we see through that delusion of I'm bad or unworthy or that I have shame about myself. Now that's very different than guilt or regret or, stuff where we feel bad about stuff that we've actually done, that we're actually guilty of. That's healthy.
Right.
To feel, some remorse for the ways that we've been unskillful, healthy. Shame about who we are, the mind lying to us again. So the more we train the mind, have compassion for how confused the mind is, and the more we heal, the less we'll experience shame. And when shame does arise, we'll just be able to see it of like, oh, I see you. What we call Mara in Buddhism. I don't know if you're familiar, but I see you, Mara. Mara is that shame, that self-doubt, that unworthiness. And we'll just, you'll get to the place where it will arise and pass and it won't cause you any suffering because you'll know it's a lie. In the meantime, it's so fucking painful. Meet it with compassion.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for answering that way. I needed to be reminded about that, the delusion that shame really is,
Yeah. Yeah. There's not, somebody said that on the Dalai Lama, the Tibetan teacher, said that he doesn't feel like people have a lot of self-hatred or shame in Tibet. And that a lot of the shame that self-hatred and shame that we experience in the West is because of our Judeo-Christian religious, conditioning. Even if you weren't raised with heavy religion, there's something about being raised in a culture that thinks that human beings are born into sin and are, intrinsically sort of bad, cast out of heaven and all that bullshit. What a difference from that than being raised in a culture that says you have Buddha nature and you can become enlightened in this lifetime, and compassion is something that you can uncover. And you have karma and you're responsible for your actions, but you're a powerful human being that, is has the ability to wake up. So different to have that as our core belief system than, the Western religious delusions that we've all had to navigate on one level or another. So maybe that's sorry for going on such a tangent there, but maybe that's enough for tonight. It is 6 o'clock. Speaking of Tibetan stuff, next week we will do the Tonglen meditation, where we breathe in the suffering, breathe out compassion, breathe in another great way to uncover and to create neural pathways and to develop the skill of compassion that we're all trying to develop. This evening is done by donation. If you can donate, please give some donations to Refuge Recovery World Services. That is money that I don't partake in, but that goes to support the organization and your meetings. And I do this Thursday night group as my own service and practice to share with you some of my time and energy and views and opinions and experience with recovery and Buddhism. So thank you for being here. I think there's a link being posted in there is a link posted at 5:57 where you can click on if you'd like to make some donations to Refuge Recovery. And I will see you next week.